Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that Guido Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today we are going to be discussing Trek to Yomi, a Akira Kurosawa-esque samurai action game. And joining me, as always, to discuss all things video games, Pete Busby. How you doing, Pete?
Hey, I picked this one for better or for worse. We'll find out which one in about, I don't know, let's call it 5 minutes. This week's fun fact, I don't know if I've used this one before, so please stop me if I have. But this is a simple one that I got to say at work this week, so I wanted to say it again. Have I ever mentioned the Latin word for grape? Or excuse me, for raisin?
No,
No.
Take that as no.
I don't
Okay.
think it's come up in conversation.
Yeah, it probably hasn't. But in Latin, like the Latin word for raisin is uva passa, which translates literally to a grape that has suffered.
Oh, this grape has seen something.
Yep, and now it's a raisin.
That's why it's all shriveled up. You got scared.
I was gonna get uva. I'm feeling pretty good that I would
Isn't-
have gotten that part.
Isn't uva like egg?
That's ova.
That's ova.
Oh.
Yeah.
I see.
But-
Okay.
I think that would be Greek though.
Whatever. That other voice you heard
Eh.
is the Mistress of Games, M. Palladino. How you doing, M?
Hello. I don't know if you guys know this, but I love samurai shit. So I was very excited to play this game. Well, I sure played it.
and hopefully, if you're hearing Pete now, sounds better because we found out that the recording software we're using thinks that his voice just is background noise,
Yep.
which was an
Just-
interesting thing to find out.
Some sort of whale noises coming in from the background.
Yeah, as I assume that Discord just like trains its noise gate on 14-year-old boy voices, and a baritone just overwhelmed it in a way that they weren't prepared for.
It
It's too
overwhelms
scary.
many people in ways they're not prepared for.
All right. Well, moving on from that, our normal plugs. Better transition. Here we go. If you wanted to hear more of Pete's dulcet baritone, you could support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens at the OG Soncast tier, which is our new $3 tier, which gets you access to the new podcast. That's what, by the time this comes out, the first paid episode will be up. So get in there, do that. That would be cool.
Did you explain anything about what we're offering?
So the OG, first off, we have our Patreon, patreon.com/deeplistens. At the $1 tier, you get access to our Discord. At the $3 tier, you get access to the Discord and access to the OG Soncast, which is a podcast about anime, mostly that came out in the 90s and early 2000s, maybe even earlier, because we're old. And
Yes.
if you don't know what OG-san means, it means basically uncle in Japanese. And if you're older than 18, you're an OG-san as far as anime is concerned. So despite the fact that we are both young and hip, we are old enough to be OG-sans.
Sure.
And so,
The
Pete,
next
how
episode-
did your most recent one go?
Yeah. Last one was good. We did Ergo Proxy, which we thought was ambitious but flawed. It's probably the nicest way to put it. And our next one is going to be Berserk. So a hard left turn into a hardcore anime action.
Good lord.
Series.
That's quite a jump. Okay.
It is completely unrelated.
Nice. And I didn't do our regular plugs because I jumped straight into that great transition. You can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens@libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. That is our email address if you wanted to send us any sort of questions or stuff. So now that we've mentioned the Patreon and how you can support it, and just FYI, like I'm counting the folks who are in the OG Soncast tier as 2 people for the purposes of whether we have to play the next game in our punishment series. So if you wanted to both make us more likely to play Mass Effect Andromeda and get that podcast, please do so. But in any case, if you support at any level, you would get access to the Discord, which might put you on the Discord report.
The Discord report. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop. This week on the Discord, we had a pretty heated discussion about our Monster Hunter podcast, where some comments may have been taken out of context.
You don't say.
Yeah, maybe a little overblown. People who don't listen to our show commenting on stuff that we covered in the show.
We spent so long talking about whether Monster Hunter, like at the end, it was at the very end. I was like, this game makes me feel kind of icky because I'm kind of at my heart, I like animals a whole lot, and this is about poaching, isn't it? And that
Yep.
discussion was what, 10 minutes of an hour and a half long show, something like
Not
that.
even.
And it was the
We
very
talked
end
for
of
a
it.
while.
Yeah.
It was
I
the
think
very end of it.
we can say whatever we want about the people who
We can.
commented on it because
They don't listen,
we
apparently.
we've confirmed that they don't listen to the show. So
And they're pro poaching, which we don't support on this podcast.
I don't know why
I have a list of
ZP.
names.
I don't know why ZP and Braden are both pro poaching. They just,
Mm,
I guess they like to see the light leave the eyes of little seals. But
yeah.
that's for them to deal with. That's between them and their
Mhm.
god. But yeah, so that happened on the Discord. Anything
Yep.
else? The football,
No.
lots of football discussion. We've had some
Oh
watch
yeah.
alongs on some football games. We had our first week 1 of the NFL happen, so we did a couple of watch alongs there. That was fun.
Is there a announcement about that?
In the Discord, we are outlining which games are getting watched which weeks, etc.
Okay.
So be ready for watch alongs on Sundays or Thursdays or Mondays because the NFL is taking
Whenever.
over the whole week.
I
Yeah, but
I did not
we might have
know
some.
there was going to be a new kickoff until I tuned into
Mm.
like the highlights of the very first game, and I was like, "This
Oh
looks different."
yeah, once they
Yeah.
were like, well, the ball must land in the landing zone. I was like, what? Excuse me.
Why?
So the reason why is
Injuries and excitement.
injuries. Yeah. So kickoffs are maybe the single most dangerous play in football because
Mhm.
you are running like 30, 40 yards at a dead sprint into people who are generally stationary trying to block you. So, people just get obliterated every
Mhm.
kickoff, most likely. Like the best possible outcome in a kickoff is it goes out the back of the end zone and people just sprint it for no reason. Now they moved the ball closer and they made it so that you're trying to aim like short of the end zone so that people have to return it, but no one gets to run until the ball is touched. So instead of getting a running start at the guy with the ball, you're all just starting from
Oh.
basically stopped. So
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
instead of people at like 20 miles an hour colliding or like 15 miles an hour colliding, it's you know,
They're
7,
just
8,
getting
9.
going. Yeah.
0.
Mhm. Okay. I'll
Uh,
allow it.
it seems like there's probably going to be fewer kickoffs returned for touchdowns, but there will probably also be fewer people having their careers ended. So I think that's a fine
Mm.
trade-off.
Works for me.
Okay.
I think those were the big things. Oh, one other thing that came up in the Discord. This is gaming news. Annapurna Interactive, the
Yes.
publisher, is essentially dead.
Yep. They lost every staff member. Everyone quit.
Can someone remind me? Can someone remind me of something they've made that I would remember?
The Artistic
Uh,
Escape was them. If you're Artful Escape, the Artful Escape,
Artful Escape. Yes.
you remember from a few years ago. A lot of. Let me look up a list of their games because we've played a lot of them. Outer Wilds,
Yep. Neon White.
Neon
Our
White.
most
Oh,
recent.
okay. Oh, wow.
They
We have played
did
most of these.
What Remains of Edith Finch.
Yep, that was another one we played.
We've played a
Yeah.
lot of
They
these.
Yep.
This might be one of our most popular
Yep.
they are
devs.
one of the more prolific publishers. We haven't played Thirsty Suitors, but I feel like at some point you're going to pick that M.
Motherfucker.
What?
Nope. Well, now I gotta pick something else.
Oh, was that what you were gonna pick? Did I get you just by looking?
Fucking spoilers. It was topical.
You still can. You still can. You still can. It's fine.
Do it anyway.
You could have just been
Don't let
like,
Gino stop
yeah,
you.
sure. It would be weird if I picked that. Oh, some other
Yeah,
ones.
it would be
Journey,
crazy.
Gone Home, Gorogoa.
Oh, yeah. They make a lot of games that make our
Have they made a game
our yearly
appeal to
roundup.
us?
Yeah. So, so what happened? It seems is that the employees wanted to spin off into a separate company because Annapurna is also a movie publishing firm, and I guess it's some rich person's like side hustle or like passion project, and so they wanted to be like a real company. And they were like, "Let us spin off," and the owner was like, "No, thank you," and so they all quit en masse to start their own company.
It was founded by
Yes.
Larry Ellison's daughter.
So we'll see.
It's weird.
On the one hand, all power to them by saying, "Hey, we want this to happen, and we're going to make it happen, whether we have the approval of our manager or not, or the boss or not." On the other hand, man, they published a lot of good stuff, and they seem to have a lot of blank checks. They published a lot of games that seemed like they were not very good, or successful. Oh right,
Oh yeah,
Kentucky Route
Kentucky
Zero,
Route
too.
Zero. Yeah. So
Yeah.
rest in peace, or we'll see you later, depending on what happens, I guess.
Yeah,
They're probably gonna spin off into the like another company, I would assume.
hopefully, I just hope that they don't. I hope that the Larry Ellison purse was not part of what allowed things to work. I hope that it was the capability of the team, I hope it wasn't the fusion of a very capable publishing team and Larry Ellison's checkbook. Because if it was those two things, that's going to be hard to recreate. If it was mostly the expertise and actually Larry Ellison's daughter was getting in the way, maybe it'll be even better. But we'll find out. It's going to be a change regardless. But yeah, that's a power move you don't see very often. Just the whole company just being like, peace.
Yep.
So good for them. Hopefully it works out. All right. Now let's turn our attention to Trek to Yomi, the game of the week. Pete, you picked it. What is this thing?
Trek to Yomi. So Trek to Yomi is a samurai game. You play a samurai, and basically what happens at the very beginning, slight spoilers, but it happens early. Bandits attack your village and more or less burn it down and kill everybody. And then you have to go on a journey of maybe vengeance, maybe love, definitely self-discovery, and fight your way through a whole bunch of various samurais, some monsters, some spirity sort of things, as you journey through Yomi, which in a gross simplification is sort of Shinto afterlife. It's not like hell, but it's where people go after they die.
Yeah, so the
More or
game
less.
starts with the main character, Hiroki, as a child, a samurai in training. His town gets attacked by bandits. His sensei goes and defends the town from the bandits, but in the process is killed. And then you kind of follow Hiroki's journey from there. Um, First off, I think we should start with the thing that's most striking about this game, the look. How would you describe this game's appearance?
Okay, so black and white, high contrast. It is very much a like straight out of a Kurosawa film. And it's got the static camera. So every scene is basically like a little diorama that you are running through. And in later levels, it starts doing some wild stuff. Like things are collapsing and being built up, and they get wild in the afterlife. So it's very visually striking. The aesthetic is mwah.
It's the scientific term is mwah.
You give it a chef kiss. Yeah,
I,
it's
I'd
one
say
of
the
the best features of it, I would say.
I'd say the most analogous game visually is probably God of War. Like the early God of Wars is what it's going for, like PS2 era God of War. Like it is a controlled camera, fixed camera. It is very authorial.
Yeah.
Like it is only showing you exactly what they want you to see, exactly how they want you to see it. It's pulling back dynamically as you're moving in dynamically sometimes. Sometimes it's just cutting hard cut to a new framing as you like step off camera in one direction. And like you said, the high contrast of light and dark really does a lot of work. Like anytime you go inside of a building, it tends to be pretty darn dark except for one light source. There's some spots where you're just dealing with straight up silhouetting, where you're fighting, samurai on a backlit environment. So it's just basically shadows fighting in front of a white background. Like really good attention to detail with the camera work, and the different light
Mhm.
sources too, I think give pretty different character, like between fire versus kind of lightning bugs, or the sun when it's the few daylit scenes that are in the game. Um, they do a lot of good work with this stuff.
Yeah. Uh, I believe. Oh, yes,
Yeah, if I can use a
please.
technical term that I'm probably going to use incorrectly, I think it like the contrast between
Mhm.
light and dark would be chiaroscuro
Yes,
in
I do.
photography.
You're
So I'm going to
correct.
throw that out there. If you know more about photography, please correct me.
Uh, yeah.
Hey, perfect.
It's if you've played Limbo, it's kind
Yes.
of like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
It
although not a 2D thing,
so
but
sometimes 2D,
sometimes.
sometimes snaps to 2D, but it is imagine Limbo's sense of light and shadow combined with like a God of War set of framing and world building, and in some cases scale. But again, PS2 God of War, not God of War 3, not PS3 or PS4 God of War. Like the scope is still, you're not crawling on giant monsters or anything. Sometimes you've got environments that are pretty big, but you're never like a little, pea
Yeah,
crawling on some large thing. Usually it's mid, I would say like mid frame. You can always tell
I think
Hiroki.
I think it would be kind of sick if you were though.
It would be, but this game is still like it's a downloadable title. It's
Yeah.
an indie game. They didn't go
Ooh.
that big on the scale. Um, so the combat, I feel, is the next thing that jumps out at you. How would you describe the combat?
So you are a samurai and you have a sword. That's it.
Sick.
Uh, you are uh, you are doing slashes. Uh, you're also putting your sword up to block, and you also get like a little throwing knives and a bow and arrows and a shotgun at one
And a
point.
gun.
Yeah, don't mind that one. It's all appropriate for 19th century Japan.
Look, it's a muzzle
Um,
loader. It's not,
yeah,
it's not the
that's
sickest
why it's
gun.
limited ammo. Um, yeah, so there's, I would say, a lot of ways to attack stuff, but we all know you're just going to be hitting like heavy attack every time. Uh,
So yeah, I
there,
would say
yeah,
there's a light attack, there's a heavy attack, and there's a
yep,
block. And then
yep,
the different moves you get are, light, light, heavy. Light, pause, light, light, heavy. Light up,
mhm,
light, down, light, heavy. There's a bunch of combos you can do, technically. And some of them will result in staggers. Some of them will put your opponent into a stun, and you can finish them with a finishing move that restores your HP because you cut
mhm.
their head off or whatever. Um, some enemies are armored, so you want to use stabbing attacks. But really, this is a game where your enemy's going to do a big old wind up, and you're going to
Yep.
hit the block button at the right time, and they will be parried, at which point they are completely vulnerable, and you do whatever the best combo is you memorized.
Yep.
In its ideal construction, I think this game wanted
Mhm.
to be like Arkham Asylum. Like in the same way that like you have some set enemies, you have certain patterns that work for those set enemies, and you need to like rhythmically input your inputs at the right
Yeah.
cadence. Like that's this game's combat in the ideal scenario. But then, like Gino said, most of the time it was hit parry
Yeah, because you
slash slash
can't.
slash,
Most
hit parry
enemies
slash
will
slash
only
slash.
let you hit them for one combo string after you parry them. So if you don't do the combo, you're just not going to get as much damage. And whatever combo does the most damage, the enemies are they're very kind. They come at you one at a time.
Yeah.
Um,
Very
sometimes they'll
generous.
yeah, sometimes there'll be one in front of you, sometimes there will be one behind you, but even if you're pincer attacked,
Mhm.
the one behind you will not attack you. Or like only one will swing at a time. You're never going to be attacked from both sides at the same time. Or very rarely. Very, very rarely. So there are special moves for like pivoting. There's a button for pivoting to face the other direction. I rarely had to use that unless I wanted to do like the backswing attack for Hiroki. I found faster and like fast enough that I could actually tag someone with it without having to parry.
Mhm.
But that was kind of it. I wasn't like, oh man, I have to parry the person in front of me, then swing around and attack the person behind me, and then come back to the person in front. Never did that happen. I don't know if it happened for either of you.
I don't think so.
No, you can.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you can style on
Yeah.
people. Like the game gives you the option to like live your samurai fantasy if you want to. Be the master of the blade. But it
If you
is
want to
from a
stun on them,
gameplay
you can,
perspective
but you
purely
don't have
optional.
to.
No. What the game boiled down to for me, and I don't know if it was
Yeah.
both of you as well. It was literally just wait for the giant wind up attack, parry it, get as many hits in as I could, backpedal,
Mhm.
step back forward again, let them do it, and you've got like a stamina meter that can run out or go down. But I found outside of very specific fights, it just never happened.
Yeah.
Like my stamina almost never ran out.
Yeah. You're getting stamina upgrades throughout the game too. So, yeah, and
No,
I don't think the expenditure is actually getting any greater as time goes on. So you could just do your combos and not have to worry about it.
Yeah,
yeah, the only exception to the loop you
Mhm.
just described, Gino, is basically when you're facing a ranged opponent and you
yeah.
need to,
You run up on
Dead Souls
them, and then
barrel
they're
roll
like,
through
"Oh
some
no,
arrows.
you have a sword and I have a bow. Crap, crap, crap," and then they're dead. Is usually how that
Hold
goes.
on. Pete, what kind of role was it? Dark
Some
Souls.
sort of Dead
Dark
Souls thing.
Souls.
Did I use the term
How
correctly?
dare you? Uh,
Dark Souls?
There's
I thought there were
Dead
like two of them.
Cells,
What's
which
Dead
we
ah,
also
Souls? Am I just
played,
making
which
stuff
is
up
an
now?
indie game that's like that. Just
Yeah, that one
assume
too.
it's like
All those roles.
yeah,
You
an
have to do
Elden Ring.
an Elden
Do the
roll.
Elden
an
Ring.
Elden Ring role.
Yeah.
Yeah, you only have to do that
Yeah.
occasionally, and you can use projectiles. Um, the you get a shuriken that basically is the equivalent of a light attack hit. You get arrows, which are basically the equivalent of a heavy attack hit, and you get a gun, which when you shoot someone, they mostly just die if they're a normal enemy. If you shoot them with a gun,
Yep.
Yep.
yeah. So
So
use the gun.
actually,
Just like a real gun.
the better sequence is to just back up, shoot, parry, shoot, and then you win. Maybe you slash a couple of times, but just shoot them. You can cycle through your yeah.
Look,
Yeah, just like
the samurai
old.
that ultimately won were the ones who decided to use the guns.
hmm
We romanticize the samurais that didn't have the guns, but you know,
We romanticize them because they were out dying honorably against the guns.
yes.
Yeah.
Led by Tom
Yeah, so
Cruise, the
I
greatest
feel like
samurai of
in
all
this, I have two problems with this game's combat. One,
Only two?
well, two big ones, two main categories. One, there's too much of it.
Yes.
There's just simply too many
time.
enemies, and they are related. One, there's too much of it. You're fighting so many people over the course of the game that at a certain point, if you've mowed down 100 random samurai, like Kurosawa movies, at least to my understanding, were not about a single Ronin just like plowing through hundreds of people namelessly, right? The the samurai duel, fighting one person one on one, is supposed to be epic unto itself.
Yes.
And when you're dealing in scale like this, it means that the weight of the life that you're taking and the life that you're risking is basically zero. So all the tension's gone.
So I will say, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're spot on for the game at least. If we're talking
Hmm.
about like Seven Samurai as the archetypal Kurosawa film,
Mhm.
there are a whole bunch of just like nameless bandits that get killed. But that whole thing is all about like strategy and
Yeah.
preparing the village and like fighting
Yeah,
intelligently.
it's
Okay,
not
hold
one
on.
It's not
dude
just
plowing
like
through goons.
hack and slash
Let's
through all
let's
these
change the
goons.
let's change the criteria. Yojimbo
No,
seems a
definitely
bit
not.
more plowing through dudes.
Depending
That's
on which
more,
one you want.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's Yojimbo. Yeah, it's definitely more time for dudes. But that's not like how do I want to say it's different? It's sort of like
Mhm.
again, it's in like service of this broader plan. Like he's trying to basically enact this like political machination of turning these two groups against each other. It's not like John Wick style. Like look at how
That would
badass
be a sick
Yojimbo is.
remake,
Although he
though.
is very badass.
But that's one problem. It's just like the amount of combat. Like at a certain point, you're fighting the same enemies over and over and over again, and you're fighting so many of them that it gets pretty tedious. And also, like when you have to in a samurai duel hit a bandit 10 times, it doesn't feel good, right? Like
Yep.
if you're gonna throw waves at me and you're going to make it, a samurai battle, um, it should be probably one hit kills Bushido blade style most of the
That's
time,
what
right?
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's my whole thing about this game. I want to play on the highest difficulty in these sorts of games. Like when I was playing Ghost of Tsushima, I started on the Kurosawa mode, which makes everything black and white. Uh, so I already had this game experience, uh, and I played it in the basically the highest difficulty, which is you get hit once and you're dead. Uh, and that's what I wanted here, but that is locked behind clearing the game at least once. And who's got time for playing a game twice these days?
But do
Uh,
enemies have the same amount of
I think
squishiness?
I think so. I think
Because if
it's like I don't know. I haven't played it on that mode, but I
because
would
that's
like to.
interesting. If it's one hit kills both ways, I would be cool with that. If they are
Yeah.
still, blade sponges and you are made of
Mhm.
paper, that would be pretty annoying. it's already annoying. Like, you have to 2-slash people just running at you with no armor on.
Yep.
And eventually, the guys with armor, depending on which moves you use, if you don't put them into a stun state, 8 or 9,
Yeah.
it's a while you can hit them. And if you're just
Like
using like a running
8.
attack, for some
Mhm.
reason that doesn't deal as much damage as like a normal attack somehow. So like it's just a lot of logistics for a game that at least originally seems to be going for verisimilitude. It's trying to be believable. It is trying to be grounded. And eventually that goes away, but at least early on I was like, okay, man, there's just the sound of wailing children
Yeah.
and women and wounded men all the time, trying to emphasize there are stakes here. And then the stakes of every battle are almost nothing.
Mhm. Yeah. Uh, do you think it would improve the experience if you were having these very like cerebral standoffs with every enemy you come across, where it's like I just have to hit you once, but if you hit me once, so we're just gonna do like this back and forth. Like I advance and then you back off, and then you advance and I back off until we come to that like epic clash. Do you think it would work better? Or do you think there are still way too many enemies to be doing that for
I would want
whatever?
half. You go
Yeah,
first, Pete.
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
They would definitely have to cut down the enemies. And I don't think I would
That's fair.
like it just because I don't really like fighting games much. That's a personal thing. I think at the very least, like playing this game, I thought to myself a lot, I wish there were more diversity of parries. Like if I had to like parry low, parry the thrust, parry high, like whatever. And I think that is like getting towards what you're talking about, Em. So I feel like we were on the same page.
Yeah. My
Just
my
you
take
might
is
wanted it to
you would
go even a bit
probably reduce
further than
the
I
count of enemies, which I think would be to
Mhm.
the game's benefit.
Yep.
And also at least then it would be a tense game, a simple but tense game. Whereas
Mhm.
how it is right now, it's just parry and then do your best combo. Like, it's very repetitive. It it echoes a lot of other action games, but not favorably. And so I would rather try to get myself into a different genre of combat rather than remind, similar to like our discussion with Monster Hunter, right? Like when y'all were talking about how you use the dual blades, and I was like, this just reminded me of other action games, but felt slow because this is, it wants
Yep.
to be something else. Um, this game felt a lot like it its look, its feel, like the style of combat it was evoking made me feel like it wanted to be a fighting game or
Mhm.
something higher stakes like Bushido Blade, which is a fighting game. If you haven't played it, it is a fighting game between samurai where if you get an unblocked hit, it will one hit kill your opponent if you do the
Yep.
right attack in the right way. So it felt like that was kind of the visual language they were going for, and even some of the attack like animations they were going for. But ultimately it was a mash it out God of War game where you just
Mhm.
kind of had to parry first. Instead of just starting with the mashing, you had to hit the parry button, and then once your combo opener was hit, you could just wail on them. Um,
Mhm.
yeah,
Here's a follow-up question. Do you think they wanted to make uh something more like Bushido Blade, and then they got talked down to like, oh, people don't like it when they get one hit, and so you need to make it so enemies have health bars and shit like that? Or do you think they were like not consciously taking that into consideration? I don't know what the answer is to this.
well, unless
This
there's an
is
interview, we'll never know.
yeah. I'm speculating because I'm like fascinated with how it got to this point.
Yeah, you can guess.
Mhm.
Maybe. So, Em, in favor of your hypothesis, one thing that I would point out, and this is in the game's favor,
Mm,
Hmm.
is just how pretty a lot of the combos look. Like we said, like you can live the art of the sword if
mhm.
you want to. And they also have these very cool sort of like line drawings in the tutorial menu, which I very much enjoyed. But like, so they obviously put through a lot of effort, a lot of time into making these combos look and sort of play fluid. But the
Right.
value in like getting one of those kick-ass combos is just so low gameplay
Yeah, I got
wise. Like that
to
artistry is not wasted, but
3/4 of
definitely
the game
diminished.
basically just using parry, light attack, light attack.
Mhm.
There were enemies that it seemed like needed to take heavy attack, so I'd occasionally hit heavy attack. Um, but that was kind of it. Like I got most of the way through the game never engaging with the combo system.
Yep.
Which is fine. It's just it made this game even more repetitive. So going, should we talk about the enemy variety or lack thereof, or should we go to the story to explain some of the later enemies?
Let's very quickly mention what the enemy types are.
Mm-hmm.
There are
Nameless
guys with
bandits.
swords. Yes. Bandits. Sometimes they have armor. Those guys are more
Guys with sword, armored guys
armored.
with
Literally, they have more health. Yes. They can hit from
a couple of
farther
them have
away.
spears.
Guys with arrows or
Arrows.
guns.
Yep.
Then there's
Hmm.
then there's like malformed,
Yep.
diseased men who play
But
And
they
the
then
don't
same
there
care
are
about light
as men with
attacks. They run
swords.
straight through light attacks. They don't even care.
Yep. And then there are ghosts who are still
Yeah.
just guys with swords.
But they're ghostly swords.
Ooh.
Oh, that's true.
And some of them can
Some of them
teleport.
can
And some
throw
of
their
them
swords.
summon more ghosts if you don't kill them fast.
Right.
I can only remember one sequence when there is guys on horses.
Yeah, and you don't
Those,
need to kill them.
yeah, you just have to block them,
True. I forgot about guys with horses.
which is
Now you just parry.
could have done more with those guys.
But those are. Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Oh wait,
Mm.
there's one mini boss.
Yes.
That's
It's
true. And
very
there's
big
an
lady with two
oni. There are
swords.
bosses that have some uniqueness to them, but and there's some like people in full on armor. They just get better combo strings, but at the end of the day, if you parry them and then you get to wail on them, it doesn't really matter what they look like or what they do, because they become wildly vulnerable when you parry them. And the parry window is very generous in this game, at least on its default difficulty. So yeah,
Yep.
And you probably fight 200 to 300 enemies over the course of what is a 5-hour game, 4 to 5 hour game. So yeah, you have to really like it. I found that it really wore on me over time. The combat, like I just was pretty done. Um,
It's just a little too active to like zone out for, but it's not as interesting as like, action games where you are just wailing on stuff. Uh, this is not a Devil May Cry where you're comboing and juggling stuff in the air.
yeah, it didn't know whether it wanted to be a Bushido blade or a Bayonetta, and unfortunately,
Yeah.
it kind of ended up in the middle, and I don't think it did it any favors. Um, so, um, going now to the story,
Put all over
because
the place.
I mean, it's here. There's not much to like. I think a lot of this game is told via the aesthetic and the settings
Mm.
you're running through. There's not much dialogue that matters. But you start as Hiroki as a kid. Your town is raided by bandits. Your sensei gets killed. You, what do you do to the lead bandit, Pete?
Mhm.
Cut off his nose.
Yeah, he wins the duel with a
Oh,
grown
Hiroki's a
man by
real
cutting off
dick.
his nose. But his sensei gets killed, and it looks like they trade. They do the classic. Both swing at the same time. Bandit falls, and then it's like, oh, the sensei won, but then he falls too. Um, and then the sensei tells you, okay, watch after my daughter. You're in charge of the village now. You need to keep everyone safe. Smash cut to what, like 5, 6 years later, a few years later. He's a grown man now.
Mhm.
Hiroki's grown. He's got a sick
Not
hat.
anymore.
Um,
Yeah.
He's in charge of the village's samurai. And what happens then?
Okay, so the bandits are going to attack a neighboring village, and if they do that, then they're gonna come over here and attack your village. So you gotta go over there and help your friends. Uh,
Yeah,
so you go and travel through some mountains for a bit, and then you find out it's a ruse.
but
Uh,
but after you run through the village and everyone is wailing and crying and on fire,
yes, we have to see all these villages on fire. There's gonna be like 3 or 4 villages on fire sequences, basically back to back. Um, yeah,
yeah,
because that's what happens in
So
Japan
much
in the
fire.
1900s,
yeah. That's what
1800s.
happens when you build all of your buildings out of wood.
Yep.
Unfortunately,
Mhm.
so turns out it's a trick. You head back to your
Yep.
village. Whatever
Oh,
they did to the other village, they did twice as hard to your village.
yeah. Also, all your friends die.
Yes,
Yep.
all the other samurai get killed.
Yes.
Yep, shot with
Mhm.
air. They get tied up and
They
then
get
shot
shot
with
with
arrows.
arrows.
Yeah.
Um, Real dick move by the bandit
Yep.
leader. Um, your village is super duper messed up. You fight your way through it. Your girlfriend boss is dead. Um, and it turns out that the guy whose nose you cut off, he wasn't dead. And
Mhm.
Yeah,
you
no
fight
nose
him in a
Jonathan
duel.
comes
You
back for
can
his
win that
revenge.
duel, but it's hard. If you win the duel,
Yep.
the game ends there. And I honestly think the game would be better if it ended right there. Um, but if you lose to him, you then go through a protracted sequence where you descend into Yomi, the Japanese afterlife.
Wait, wait,
Um,
wait.
yep.
Before we get into the next part,
Hmm.
does it just roll credits? Like if you end there? Does it just
Uh,
like go right into it?
no, Pete, you want to describe it?
No, you.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'll preface this. I watched it on YouTube. I cheated, but you wander out like outside the
Uh-huh.
village. You find your dead girlfriend slash boss, and then she does a voiceover saying basically like, "I'll wait for you forever in the underworld," and you wander off forlornly, sort of
Mhm.
Incredible Hulk style. Like you're just going to
Yeah,
wander
she's
through
I
it
like,
until
see.
you die
I'm sorry your
from your
life will be
beloved in
lonely, and
Yomi.
you like drop the sword. And honestly, that would have been a pretty good ending, right?
Could
Like,
could you could you imagine if we
Yeah,
didn't look up anything about
interesting.
this game, we played through, and then we got to that and we beat the guy on the first try, and we were just like, yeah, yeah, and then we were like, yeah,
Like
that
all of
was.
us
I
by
wonder why it
complete
was called that.
coincidence.
well, I guess you
Weird.
sent him to Yomi by killing
Yeah.
him. So,
Welcome to
um,
hell, idiot.
what a tight hour and a half, 2 hour game.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid
That would
experience.
have been a great episode.
I
Yeah,
loved the
just
way
enough
it
combat.
looked.
You know,
It was
Yeah.
really grounded.
didn't
Like
wear out
they
its
really
welcome.
make you feel that these villages are being burned down. You talk to the villagers; they're all sad about their loved ones being killed. Wow. But no, if you lose that duel, you go to Yomi. At first, would you say it's basically you're wandering through Blight Town from Dark Souls,
Yes.
basically?
Yeah, it's all of the people are like, they call them the tainted, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're like looking kind of gross and they seem sick.
Yeah,
Uh but they don't like you cuz yeah,
They
you were alive and they don't like that.
they got the taint, and you
Yep.
don't.
Yep.
Um,
So you fight them, it's fine. They're just more enemies.
I I will say one aesthetic choice, like there's a bunch of what appear to be baskets or cocoons, and whenever you
Mhm.
get near one, like horrible spider arms
oh
and a human
Mhm.
body emerge from them. You can cut those down, but they can attack you. That was cool. That was a really good design. I loved the look of those things.
Mhm.
Um, but other than that, you're just
yeah. Real
fighting
gross,
dudes with
definitely.
swords,
Yeah.
and killing the hell out of them. Uh,
Yep.
It's like it's a swamp level, like everything's decaying and falling apart. Um,
Mhm.
and you're chasing after the ghost of Aiko,
Yeah.
your beloved. Um,
Mhm.
And, right. And then she descends into the swamp, and Tall Blade Lady emerges, and you kill Tall Blade Lady,
yeah,
and you're like, "Dear God, I've killed Aiko," and then she's like, "No, you gave me
and
rest." And
the
you're like,
whole game we
"Cool."
haven't said
And
it's
then
all in
you walk
Japanese with
through Yomi.
subtitles, at least by default. Yeah, and
Yeah.
what Aiko is shouting at you
Good voice
in
acting.
Japanese while she's trying to stab you a lot is "You let me die, you let Aiko die. Like this is your fault, basically." Um, and I didn't see
Is it
subtitles for
though?
that one. No, it's not his fault, but he swore to be by her side,
Yeah,
and so he
the
should have
game.
died by her side instead of going to take care of this other village that would have maybe protected his village. But you know, the game posits that he's very guilty about this. Um,
Yeah, the whole setup is sort of like you failed in your duty, and now you feel guilty, such that like the game's asking basically like, will you fulfill this ultimate duty you had in some way, or will you be corrupted by
Nates, I think was the
love,
last one.
vengeance, some other thing?
Uh, no, duty. It's like love, duty,
Yeah.
or
Vengeance.
hatred. Yeah.
Yeah, so you
Which I don't know. I don't know if those are the be all end all. You could do other things. Yeah.
Well, they're also not really like mutually exclusive. Like you could fulfill your duty by wreaking horrible vengeance on
What
Nono's
is that
Johnson,
guy's name?
which to be clear
uh
isn't his actual name.
Kage uh
It is
Kaguro.
something else. I- it's a
Goro.
K name.
Yes.
Kaguro is his
Kurigawa.
name.
Isn't that the guy from Yu Yu
Kagura.
Hakusho? Mm.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
Kagoro.
I believe so.
That's
Oh,
Toguro.
you're right.
The Toguro brothers.
But that's Toguro with a
Mm-hmm.
T. It's Yu Yu
But yeah,
Hakusho.
you after you defeat
Yes.
Aiko's ghost or whatever, you then enter into the most God of War esque location. Um, it's like fully Yomi. You've accepted that you're in Yomi now. You're not in like the interstitial space anymore, and now physics are weird. Like you start running on pathways that assemble under your feet. There's puzzles, but the puzzles are
Mm-hmm.
mostly look at kanji and then put them onto a dial in the correct
Do you
order.
do you see kanji in the environment? Put those into these
Yeah.
dials.
Yeah, and most of the kanjis are, I mean, they're real basic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do
Like
the
the
do the
yeah,
puzzles actually mean anything if you
I think I
like
saw fire in there somewhere.
I mean,
compare the words to each other?
the very
That
first
like
one, the very
yeah.
first puzzle was uh, the kanji for down, the kanji for fire, and then the kanji for heaven.
Mm,
Um, and that was the order. Like down was the lowest one, then fire was the middle, then heaven was the top. I was like, okay, I see what you're going for here. I think. Um, and then it just got a little bit more like, here's the kanji for river. Here's the kanji for
mhm.
wood. And I was like, okay, are we just doing basic ass kanjis? Is that what's happening?
Yeah. We're playing learn Japanese, except they don't define any of these, I don't think.
No, but I
Yeah.
bet. Look, maybe there's a compound word there that I don't know. If you just put
No,
all
they
those
just toss them
kanjis
up there.
together, but it seemed to me like they were just going for here's some kanji. Um, but then you're basically just continuing through Yomi, right? You're fighting more ghosts. This is where the ghosts show up. The ghosts are the people you've killed, so you're killing them a second time, um, which is kind of funny, I guess. They're all mad
I
at you.
wonder I wonder if it's 1-to-1 like enemies in the first couple of acts, compared to these enemies.
I don't think it is. Yeah,
Oh,
Mm,
there's
mhm.
yeah, there'd be
also
too many
way
in the
too
second half,
few
wouldn't there?
complete
Yeah.
mooks,
Spend more time in
Right.
who are all
Yomi
like
than you do outside of
mid-tier
Yomi.
Mhm.
samurai or bandits, not the low-tier bandits. But they do hit you
Mhm.
with like, "You're the first man I ever killed," and then you kill him again. Um,
Hmm.
no. So you
Yeah.
fight your way through. You fight your sensei.
Yeah, not a
He's
lot
been
of
turned into an
reflection.
oni.
Just like, well,
You beat
double up.
him, and then he turns into a normal ghost again. And he's like, "Do you want to do love or duty or vengeance?" And you get to pick again. And then you keep fighting your way through. Yeah. What?
You know what it reminded me of? When we had to pick between like love and duty, I was like, you know what this reminds me of?
I thought
One of the best
I
games
thought you
ever.
were gonna
Sonic.
say
I had to choose
where
between
you're
Amy and
choosing
a human woman.
between what was it Shadow where the branches go
Oh
off
yeah.
in like evil and good and yeah, it's one of those. No,
This
there are no
time,
branching paths here.
if you pick the
Oh,
right
right,
thing,
right,
it's
right.
you and Vector the crocodile fighting against Dr.
Oh.
Robotnik. But if you pick the other one, it's you and Rouge the Bat fighting against an
Hmm.
alien.
Could you imagine if Vector the crocodile was just in
Yeah.
the black and white? It- we don't have to entertain that thought. That just occurred to me.
Scroll.
Modding community. You
I
can be
feel
the
like
person who does this.
I feel like the modding community could save this one in many
Vector watching. I live
ways.
the life of Bushido.
Look, we all know that Vector the crocodile loves two things: sweet tunes and the life of Bushido. These are his two
Mhm.
defining traits.
It is known.
Oh man! Now I just want him
And
standing in the
Bushido.
background, just like in
Yeah,
those
right.
endings, just there.
Yep. Mhm,
Yep.
mhm, mhm.
You sure you want to pick revenge? That sounds pretty dark.
Just nodding
But yeah,
solemnly.
you keep fighting your way
Sweet Tootie,
through. There's
though.
more and more Yomi. It was too long. I
Yeah.
got the bit very early on, and the enemies at this area are not that much harder. They're just more annoying because they teleport
Mhm.
around and they throw stuff at you. And if you don't
Yeah,
kill them,
most of them
sometimes
do.
they summon more dudes. So the stakes aren't that much higher. They're just more annoying. And it ends with you having to make a choice. Uh,
Oh man.
How would you
Oh,
describe this choice?
okay. So you know in Mass Effect 3, that ending that everyone loved,
Yes.
where a ghost child appears and then is like, "All right, you've made all these choices up until now, but actually I'm just gonna have you make one more choice. Do you want the good ending, the neutral ending, or the bad ending?" And you just pick one of those, and that's what you get. What if what if this also had that? Do you want to do your duty to your people? Do you want to commit yourself to your love for
I have
Aiko,
that.
or do you want to get your bloody revenge? And those are your choices. Uh, I don't think we've had any choices up until now in this game, by the
Well,
way.
it's the same three choices. It's the same choice three
Yeah.
times.
Yes. Yes. Hmm. 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 And
I-
then what's the fourth choice?
Well,
You
the
have
fourth
one
choice
other.
is winning
Yeah.
the earlier battle
Yeah.
so that the game's
Earlier.
better.
Affects
Right. I
nothing,
forgot about that.
regardless of what you choose.
Yeah. Damn. If
So
only I had thought of that.
yeah, the superior choice is getting good earlier
Mm,
on so that you have
mhm.
a better game.
Win the duel.
But
Yeah,
if
win
you
the duel
failing
2 hours
that, you
earlier.
play more of this, and then you get to pick one of these three options. And it doesn't do anything until you get to the final boss. You get a different ending depending on which of those you pick. And we didn't say, but the ghost child is yourself as a
Oh
child.
yeah. That's. Is it important? It's
Well,
certainly a
eh,
thing that happens. Oh right.
yeah.
Obviously.
Look, it's because you don't have
Yeah.
balance, and
I
then
mean,
you kick the crap out of
you also fight
yourself
yourself during
until it's
Link's trial,
balanced.
which I mean,
Um,
obviously you were going to at some point.
but yeah,
That
you
is what balances me.
The options are like Aiko's ghost is there. You can pick her. Your sensei's ghost is there. You can pick him if you want to
I
pick
guess I
duty,
balance
or you
out.
can kill your child self so that you are the rawest MFer around. Um, and that is the third option. And then you go back. You're back in your village. You come back to life. You're killing dudes again. Killing your way. Yep. Turns out you were okay enough. And then you fight Kaguro again, and depending on which thing you picked, you get one of three endings.
Still on fire.
Pete, do you want to describe which one did you felt resonated the most?
Sure. I mean, they were all pretty straightforward. So I picked the love ending because this game is very obviously a story about a man going through the underworld to save his beloved, right? Like that template's weirdly popular across a whole bunch of like world cultures. Like you have Orpheus. I think Odysseus does it. You have the ancient Japanese legend that this game itself is based on. Like it's like a
I mean,
weird trope. I guess insofar as
to
like
an extent, it makes
what's the
sense
like
that it is
best
a
ultimate thing?
endure
You
it.
do it in the
It is
Disney
convergent
Hercules movie.
evolution. People die.
Like
They
what's the
always
ultimate
die.
thing you could
Your
do for
loved
your
ones always
beloved? I
die. That
guess
is part
fight
of
your way
being
through
human.
hell
So
for
a
them.
bunch of cultures
But I
having
picked that
different
one.
stories based around this inevitable fact of life makes a lot of sense. It's just
Yeah.
you got to go get them.
What if you just love so much, you can go and get them?
Yeah, it does. Going to get them.
By just
Okay, hold on.
staying in the
Hold
burning
on.
building.
Yeah, yeah, not
But
exactly
yeah, I picked
going
that one.
back. I mean, technically,
It
yes.
basically ends with
You kill
you returning to Yomi
your
to be
bitter
with
rival, and then
Aiko.
you just sit down and the building collapses on you. And then you are a
Well,
ghost
fair enough.
in Yomi, which, yeah, I mean, that's the most expedient way. It seemed like a lot of trouble the last time you went down there, so
Yes.
I get it. I would also want to skip all that part of the game
Well, you
by
got to get
just
to
sitting
Yomi
down
somehow.
and getting killed.
Yeah, so
Anyway,
that's one option. The duty option, you kill the guy and then you're like, I'm a samurai, I always will be, and then you samurai around, I guess.
yep.
And then if you were the Ross MFer around, you kill that guy and then you take his armor and you lead the bandits. Yeah, you
Strength
assume
of
That,
his
next
identity.
generation.
yeah, that one's kind of hilarious. Mm. Mhm.
And no one questions it. You're like, I'm Kaguro
Yeah,
now.
you
And they're like,
become.
sure.
Okay.
It's like that was a hard left turn. Yeah. You get to keep the nose though. You get to keep
Yes.
your
So
nose.
I found none of the endings especially satisfying. I guess
No.
the most
Well,
satisfying
yeah,
one is if you
you
win,
kill
and then
Rick. Like,
Hiroki
do your
just kind
thing,
of has
baby.
to, yeah, accept that he failed the love of his life, and he has to live with that, instead of these three endings. But yeah, any other closing thoughts on Trek
Yeah.
to Yomi?
Chapter 3, the early one.
They are good.
Mhm.
They are
I do
good.
think
Soundtrack is
we
good.
barely mentioned them
You
except
know,
when I wanted
it,
to shout them out earlier. I do
voice
think
acting
the
is very
menu
good.
animations
Yeah.
are arguably the best part of the entire game.
This
Yep.
is
You
a
just
game to
watch
watch
them.
someone play. Honestly,
Yeah. The problem with this game is yeah, it's
Voice
80%
acting's
combat.
good. Aesthetics are
So
good. It's really
if
gameplay.
you
It's like
care
the biggest
about
issue.
doing combat, this one's for you.
Yeah.
If you
But
just
like
want the
only like the
aesthetics,
first hour and a half.
watch it on YouTube. But yeah, yeah, you could watch Seven Samurai. You could play Ghost of Tsushima on the Kurosawa mode, and you could play
Yeah, or
Bushido
watch Seven
Blade.
Samurai. Just do that.
You could do a lot of things. Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
train in the blade while other people are walking around enjoying their lives. You can
Mhm.
study the blade.
Go
Don't
to
do
your
that.
local Go to your local
You
convention,
could
get a
live the life
samurai
of Bushido
sword that they
yourself,
sell there,
you know?
and then just do that and don't play this game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't
that's
think this is a terrible game.
Oh
I'll
no, it's not a
say.
terrible game.
Yes.
My issue with it. I shouldn't even say issue with it.
Just live it.
I found this game's
Just live it.
aesthetic and its early pitches very compelling. I wanted to love this game.
Mhm.
The more I
Yes.
played of it, the more I
Uh-huh.
realized, oh, this is a pretty standard action game with this aesthetic. I can see like a number of different tweaks where I love this game.
Yep.
And unfortunately we ended up in a version where I merely like it. You know, I'm
Mm.
pretty I would recommend someone watch it. I would recommend someone check it out if they're very into the aesthetic, but I don't think I would recommend this game to an action game fan just as like best in class action, you know?
Yep.
Like a game like Signalis or something, I would recommend that as like a great game to play, even if you are not down for the story in any way. Like if you're just like a Resident Evil person, I'd be like, play this. This is the one you want. This
Okay.
game, I have a hard time pitching it without someone having a very specific niche that they're looking to play or looking to,
Yep.
touch.
Mhm.
Yeah, so unfortunately, not best in class for the genre. That's why I think if it had just ducked itself into a different genre, or like had been just different enough that the genre clashes weren't so obvious, it probably could have gotten by. But alas, that was not the game we got. Which now means, Em, it is your turn to pick.
All right. It's my turn to pick, and I have already told you what I wanted to pick.
You should pick it.
So
Oh, I don't remember what it was because I have the brain of a goldfish.
I also forgot what the name. Hold on. I have it installed.
I mean, if
We
I
are going.
think, oh, go ahead.
I got it. I got it. We are going to play the Annapurna Interactive rest in
I
peace
honestly
game, Thirsty Suitors. This is yes.
Yeah,
I
you're making suits. Yeah,
yeah,
but you're so thirsty.
could be.
It's very warm when you're in a
Yeah.
haberdashery, so,
I
you're
assume it's a
collecting
game
water.
about some sort of haberdashery.
I was gonna read the description, but the
Yeah,
what is this Game Pass thing doesn't have anything to read on it. Oh, see in store. Thank you. A stylish, story-driven adventure that unfolds through turn-based battles, skateboarding, and cooking. Help Jala confront her mistakes, make up with her exes, reconcile cultural differences, and become the person she was meant to be. Easy, right?
See,
I guess we'll find out.
now I want root beer tapper, but it's a bunch of people who make suits, and you're just providing them refreshment.
We can add that to the list of games we're gonna make.
Yeah. All
Write
right.
that down.
So Thirsty Suitors coming up next. Thank you, Pete. Yep. Thank you, M.
Thank you. Play Samurai on Final Fantasy
yeah. As we
14.
said, a game maybe a little bit less
Someone
than
has
some
to.
of its parts, but still very interesting in a lot of
Mm.
places.
Or Live the Blade.
Max that card out. Max that credit card out, and then wander off into the woods and cut down saplings until you are strong. Like
Don't do that.
shake a
the
tree
blade.
and then cut down the leaves as they fall. I think that's how you want to live your life. Well, and thank you, listeners. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And please support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Till next time, peace.